This course is a companion to the book The Project Brain: Evolving Project Managers, available on Amazon. If you find today's session valuable, the book goes deeper on every framework you are about to learn, including the 3-tier document system, the Janitor Protocol, synthetic stakeholder simulations, and the full blueprint for an artificial intelligence-powered project management office you can run from your own desktop. You can find it by searching for The Project Brain by Self-Made PM on Amazon or by visiting selfmadepm.com. Now let us begin the course. 1. Welcome to this 3-hour professional development session on building your own artificial intelligence-powered project management office using Claude. Over the next 3 hours, you will learn how to transform a stateless chatbot into a persistent thinking partner that remembers your project, your stakeholders, and your constraints across every session. This course is eligible for 3 self-reported professional development units with the Project Management Institute under the online or digital media category, and it maps to the ways of working edge of the Project Management Institute talent triangle. Let us begin. 2. By the end of this session, you will be able to do 3 things. First, you will be able to build a persistent Claude project that functions as a dedicated project management office for one of your real initiatives. Second, you will be able to maintain that office over time using a systematic approach called the Janitor Protocol. Third, you will be able to produce real deliverables from it, including Gantt charts, executive dashboards, stakeholder simulations, and multi-audience status reports. Each objective maps to a dedicated section of this course. 3. Here is how we will spend our 3 hours together. Part 1 covers the fundamental problem, which is why stateless chatbots fail project managers. Part 2 introduces the Claude Project's feature and the architecture of a persistent workspace. Part 3 walks through the 3-tier document system that forms the project brain. Part 4 teaches the Janitor Protocol for keeping your office clean. Part 5 demonstrates the 4 highest leverage capabilities your new office unlocks. Part 6 covers practical onboarding and frequently asked questions. At the end, I will walk you through exactly how to claim your professional development units. Before we build anything, we need to understand why most project managers abandon artificial intelligence tools within a few weeks of trying them. The problem is not intelligence. Modern, large language models are extraordinarily capable. The problem is memory, and for a project manager, memory is everything. 5. Every project manager has lived this scene. You open a new chat window, you spend 40 minutes explaining your project, who the sponsor is, what the budget is, which vendor is behind schedule, what the 3 active risks look like. You get useful output, you close the tab. The next morning, you open a new chat and the tool has no memory of any of it. You start over. You re-explain the sponsor, the budget, the vendor, the risks. After 2 or 3 cycles of this, you stop bothering. The perceived time savings evaporate under the weight of repeated context loading. This is the stateless problem, and it is the single biggest reason artificial intelligence tools fail in project management environments. A stateless chatbot treats every conversation as an island, and a project manager cannot live on an island. You live in a continent of accumulated context. 6. Project management is a context-heavy discipline. You track stakeholders with specific communication preferences and political motivations. You track constraints across scope, schedule, cost, quality, and resources. You track history, which includes past decisions, prior risks that materialized, and commitments made in the steering committee 8 weeks ago. You track politics, which is the unwritten map of who really makes decisions and whose concerns secretly drive others. A stateless tool cannot help you with any of this because it has no standing exposure to any of it. Every session, you effectively hire a brilliant consultant who has never met anyone on your project and must be briefed from scratch. No consultant works that way in real life. Neither should your artificial intelligence. 7. Here is the principle that will guide the rest of this course. The value of artificial intelligence in project management is directly proportional to the persistence of its context. A tool that remembers your project is exponentially more useful than one that does not. Not twice as useful, not 3 times as useful, exponentially, because compounding context means every new interaction builds on everything that came before, and the marginal value of each interaction increases over time rather than decreasing. Our job in the next 3 hours is to engineer that persistence. 8. Claude offers a feature called projects. A project is a bounded workspace with 3 components: a set of instructions that shape how the assistant behaves inside that space, a knowledge base of documents the assistant always has access to, and a running set of conversations that stay inside that workspace. Together, these 3 components give you the persistence we just said was essential. The first component is the instruction set. Think of this as the job description you hand to a new project analyst on their first day. It defines their role, their tone, the frameworks they default to, and the outputs they are expected to produce. For a project management office workspace, your instructions should state that the assistant acts as a project analyst for a named initiative, that it favors specific frameworks such as the project management body of knowledge, or Agile, or a hybrid, that it formats responses in a specific way, and that it proactively flags risks, dependencies, and open decisions. A good instruction set is 2 to 4 paragraphs long. Too short and the behavior is inconsistent. Too long and the assistant loses focus on the task in front of it. 10. The second component is the knowledge base, which is the set of documents uploaded into the project. These documents are available to every conversation in that project without you having to paste them again. For a standard project management office workspace, you want at minimum your project charter, your current stakeholder register, your risk register, your most recent status report, and any standards documents your organization requires you to follow. Do not upload everything you have. Upload what is load-bearing for decisions. A cluttered knowledge base is slower to reason over and more likely to surface stale information. 11. The third component is conversation continuity. Every chat you start inside the project is preserved and can be resumed later. This is where your institutional memory lives. When you held a steering committee and captured the decisions in a conversation with the assistant 2 weeks ago, you can return to that thread and the full context is intact. Over time, this becomes a searchable log of your project's thinking, not just its documents. Many project managers underuse this because they treat each conversation as disposable. Treat them as laboratory notebooks instead. 12. Before we go deeper, let us be clear about what you are not building. You are not building custom software. You are not writing application code. You are not standing up a server. You are assembling a workspace, in the same way you might assemble a physical office by arranging a desk, a filing cabinet, and a wall calendar. The skill is curation, not engineering. If you have never written a line of code in your life, you can still build a world-class project management office with what we are about to cover. 13. Now we get to the structure of the knowledge base itself. Most people dump documents into their project at random and wonder why the output is inconsistent. The fix is a three-tier structure that separates documents by how often they change. We call this structure the project brain, and it has three layers. 14. The base tier is the Constitution. These are the documents that almost never change for the life of the project. Your project charter, the approved scope statement, the governance model, the team structure. Once these are stable, you upload them and you leave them alone. The Constitution answers the question, what project are we running and under what rules? A good Constitution is 3 to 6 documents, no more. 15. The middle tier is news. These are the documents that change frequently, often weekly or even daily. Your current status report, your active risk register, your live issues log, this week's meeting notes. News is the fastest rotating tier and it needs active maintenance. We will cover that maintenance in the Janitor Protocol section. News answers the question, where is the project right now? 16. The top tier is the library. These are reference materials, templates, organizational standards, historical lessons learned from prior projects, policies you must comply with. The library is the least volatile tier and the most optional. You add to it when the assistant produces generic output that does not match how your organization actually operates, and you want to anchor its future output to specific standards. The library answers the question, what rules, templates, and patterns should guide our work? 17. The tiered structure matters for two reasons. First, it tells you what to maintain and how often. The Constitution is touched rarely. News is touched weekly. The library is touched occasionally when gaps appear. Second, when you instruct the assistant, you can refer to the tiers explicitly. You can say, prioritize the Constitution and the current news when answering, and you will get sharper, more grounded responses than if the documents were a single, undifferentiated pile. 18. A persistent workspace without maintenance becomes a haunted house. Stale risks, outdated stakeholder names, old status reports, superseded decisions. The assistant will cheerfully draw on all of it and produce confidently wrong output. The Janitor Protocol is the discipline of cleaning the workspace on a regular cadence. 19. The core of the protocol is a weekly pass, ideally scheduled on the same day and time each week. In 30 minutes, you do 3 things. You update the news tier with this week's status, open risks, and active issues. You retire any document that is no longer accurate, replacing it with the current version rather than stacking new copies on top of old ones. And you check your instruction prompt to see if your role or the project's phase has shifted enough to warrant an update. 30 minutes a week is a small tax to pay for a workspace that stays sharp. 20. Your instruction set is a living document. As your project moves from initiation to planning to execution to closing, the behavior you want from the assistant will shift. In initiation, you want help drafting the charter and running stakeholder identification. In execution, you want help with status reporting, risk tracking, and stakeholder communication. In closing, you want help assembling lessons learned and the project closure report. Keep a short change log at the top of your instruction set, noting what you changed and when. When the assistant starts behaving unexpectedly, the change log is often where the answer lives. 21. Do not let old documents linger. If you upload a new status report, remove the old one. If a risk has been closed, move it to a closed risks archive and take it out of the active register. If a stakeholder has rotated off the project, update the register. The retirement rule sounds obvious, and it is routinely violated. Violating it is the single biggest reason a project management office workspace degrades over a few months. Keep news fresh by subtracting, not just adding. 22. We are now going to look at 4 capabilities your new project management office unlocks. Each of them, on its own, is worth the setup time. Together, they transform how you spend your week. The first capability is the on-demand generation of Gantt charts and dashboards. Traditionally, these require licensed software and hours of manual updating. With a persistent project management office, you feed the assistant your milestones and dependencies once, and from then on, you can ask for a Gantt in diagram syntax or a dashboard layout in whatever format your stakeholders prefer. You no longer justify an expensive software license. You no longer rebuild the dashboard from scratch every reporting cycle. The structure lives in the project, and each generation is a one-prompt operation. 24. The second capability is synthetic stakeholder simulation. This is the one most project managers never discover. Load profiles of your critical stakeholders into the project, including their communication preferences, historical objections, and political motivations. Then, before your next steering committee, ask the assistant to role-play your most skeptical stakeholder and tear apart your executive summary. Run your risk escalation past a simulated version of your sponsor. You will catch blind spots you would never see by reviewing your own slides. Over time, as you feed real reactions back into the persona, the simulation gets sharper. After a few cycles, it becomes unnervingly accurate. 25. The third capability is multi-audience reporting. You write your project update once in comprehensive form. Then you use targeted prompts to reformat that single source for each audience. The sponsor gets a one-page summary. The team gets technical detail. The compliance officer gets a risk-focused version. The external stakeholder gets acronyms expanded and jargon stripped. The value is not just speed, it is consistency. Every audience receives their preferred format from the same source data, which eliminates the contradictions and omissions that plague manual rewriting across 5 different documents. 26. The fourth capability is decision archaeology. Because every conversation inside the project is preserved, you can go back months later and ask, what did we decide about the vendor selection in March, and what was the reasoning? The assistant can summarize the thread and surface the decision and its context. Traditional project archives are usually dead. Documents are filed, never revisited, and the reasoning behind a decision is lost within a quarter. A persistent workspace keeps the reasoning alive and searchable. When an auditor or a new sponsor asks why you did what you did, you can answer in minutes instead of hours. 27. You do not need to build everything at once. The goal of your first sitting is a working project management office for one initiative, not a portfolio-wide system. Let us cover exactly how to start this week. 28. Start with one active initiative. Upload your charter, your current stakeholder register, and your most recent status report. That is 3 documents. Write a short instruction set that says the assistant is the project analyst for this initiative and should default to your preferred frameworks. Then run 3 test prompts. Ask for a stakeholder analysis of a named stakeholder. Ask for a risk you may have missed. Ask for an executive summary of the current status. Read the output critically. Where it is wrong, adjust the documents or the instructions. Within 1 hour, you have a functional workspace. 29. Once a single project office works, you can scale to a portfolio. Do not put all your projects into one workspace. Context will contaminate across them, and the assistant will confuse one project's risks with another's. Create a separate project per active initiative, and create one master project management office workspace that holds cross-project information such as portfolio-level risks, resource allocation, and organizational standards. The master workspace is where you stand when you need a bird's-eye view. The individual project workspaces are where you live for day-to-day work. 30. Follow your organization's data governance policies. Anthropic does not train on data submitted through paid plans, but that does not exempt you from your organization's own rules about classified, regulated, or sensitive information. A safe default is to anonymize or generalize sensitive content before uploading. Replace real client names with placeholders. Scrub financial figures down to orders of magnitude when they are not load-bearing. Remove personally identifiable information. The assistant still has enough structural context to be useful, and you have not created a compliance headache. 31. We covered a lot. Let us recap. You can now build a persistent project management office in Claude using instructions, a knowledge base structured in 3 tiers, and conversation continuity. You can maintain it with a weekly Janitor Protocol that keeps news fresh, retires stale documents, and versions your instruction set as the project phase evolves. And you can produce real deliverables from it, including Gantt charts, dashboards, synthetic stakeholder simulations, multi-audience reports, and decision archaeology. Your next step is to spend 1 hour this week building the office for one of your active projects. 32. To claim your 3 professional development units, log into your Project Management Institute dashboard at the Continuing Certification Requirement System, which is abbreviated CCRS. Select Report Professional Development Units. Choose the category labeled Online or Digital Media. Enter the course title exactly as shown on your certificate, which is Build Your Own AI-powered Project Management Office with Claude. Enter the date you completed the course. Enter the provider name as Self-Made PM. Enter the Professional Development Unit value of 3 allocated to the Ways of Working area of the Talent Triangle. Retain your certificate of completion in case of an audit. Self-Made PM is not a Project Management Institute authorized training partner, and professional development units on this platform are self-reported. Thank you for spending these 3 hours with me. I will see you in the next course. Thank you for completing this course. If the ideas in this session spark something for you, the next step is the book. The Project Brain, Evolving Project Managers, is available now on Amazon and goes far beyond what we could cover in this session. It contains the complete system for building, maintaining, and scaling an artificial intelligence-powered project management office. The full Janitor Protocol with templates, deeper stakeholder simulation patterns, and real-world case studies from practitioners who have saved 10 to 15 hours per week using these methods. You can find more free courses, tools, and articles at selfmadepm.com. Again, thank you for your time, and remember to log your professional development units. I will see you in the next course. 34.